rolling here. Okay, we'd be rolling. Vocal check 1, 2, 3. So on the agenda for today, we're going to do these two labs, 8226 and 8543 on packet tracer. Even if you're here in person in the lab room, we're going to do them on packet tracer for consistency of results. This is going to be our first time for most of us ever enter any iOS commands. Now, let's look at what's happening here for the next of the week. What should you expect as this Cisco class begins to wind down? Today is our last in-person lab opportunity. Monday was our last live lecture result. I have turned on the final exams, and I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to go into the Network Academy. How do we get to that? How do you get to the so-called course feedback form or student satisfaction survey? So you've got a whole week to take this final exam. It'll be on until a week from today, 9 o'clock in the morning. A week from today, Wednesday, is the deadline for finishing the final exam and all other work in the class. As a reminder, 50% of your grade comes from these two written exams. The 1.5 mid-checkpoint exam, they call it a checkpoint exam. It's kind of like a midterm. And this final exam, those will be averaged together numerically, and that'll be 50% of your grade for the two written exams. The other 50% of your grade will come from these lab submissions that you've done either by a packet tracer remotely or here in person. And I do drop the lowest lab grade, so you can safely not perform one lab or safely skip one lab, and it won't affect your grade. Those of you who are assigned to continue with me, same bat time, same bat channel. Will it be Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 o'clock? Mondays will be the 9 a.m. lecture. Wednesdays will be the 9 a.m. lab, which you'll have the opportunity to come here and do in person on Wednesday. That's going to start after spring break on Monday, March the 22nd at 9 a.m. We'll kick off that second course. Now, I'm going to jump over here to the Cisco Networking Academy. Good morning. I'm recording. We're just going through the overview here. Please have a seat. So I'm going to show you this. The Cisco Networking Academy they used to use something called Canvas. Now they use something called Moodle. Tarrant County College used to use Campus Cursor. Then we're using Blackboard. We're going to get rid of Blackboard in the fall. We're going to Canvas, which if you've got any children in school anywhere in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, they're probably already using Canvas. You might already be used to that. So Cisco Academy has migrated to Moodle, and I'm going to show you how to go in here and see these two required tests that you have to take to get half of your grade in my class. So once you log into the Cisco Networking Academy, you're going to see this. You probably this is the first Cisco course you ever taken. You'll just see the first one, the Networking Essentials, this course that we're taking. So I'm going to go and float my mouse over there and launch the course. And this is where the online ebook is located. But what we're interested in here is this checkpoint exam, chapter 1 through 5 checkpoint exam. It's kind of like a midterm. Some of you guys have already taken it, but I want to show you how to get to here just in case you didn't know where it is. I'm going to click on that, and I get the screen that says when I'm ready to take the assessment, I'm going to click on the word take assessment. And then when you get any questions about packet tracer, you're going to skip them. You must choose packet tracer. Okay, so I'm going to click packet tracer, and I'll say I've got the newer version because that's the one we got here. Then I'll say continue. And we're not going to open it. We're going to skip the packet tracer because packet tracer doesn't always work in everybody's environment. And there's a couple of questions in there that will have packet tracer stuff on them. If you can get packet tracer working on your PC and get those questions correct, it's going to be like extra credit for you. Otherwise, I'm going to apply a little bit of extra credit myself to everyone that doesn't get that. So if you can get this right in packet tracer, you can get a little bit extra stuff on this. So that's what it looks like when you get and finish the test. You'll click next to go to the questions in the test, and when you're finished, you click submit. Now, when I click submit, he's going to go, oh, Mark, you didn't answer all these questions here. Oh dear, do you want to submit that anyway? He just warned you there if you happen to skip a question. He'll poke it up there and tell you which question you missed, and you can go back and fix that. Okay, so I'm not going to submit my test here on my fake student ID because I didn't answer anything. Now, the final exam. How do we get to the final exam? I'm going to go back to the course home. Now, look at this. Oh dear, this is so alarming. I'm going to click on final exam, and it's going to say, you haven't taken the course feedback form yet. Cisco has a business rule, sometimes called a business requirement, that you must take their student satisfaction survey before you're allowed to take the final exam. So the way you do that is up here where it says course feedback, click on the course feedback form, and it looks like another test. click on Take Assessment. This is a non-graded assessment. It's just like an anonymous survey that you'll take. So Cisco has, did you know that Cisco has 10,000 networking academies throughout the world? Did you know we've had 10 million students in the past 20 years? Did you know that we're the most successful e-learning initiative ever? So Cisco likes to collect what kind of grades they've made on their tests and how satisfied are they with the course, but it's anonymous. All your personal information is taken out. Instructors, nobody can see that particular information. I can just see, it's a general rule. This is your one chance to comment about my choice of bath soap. You can do it in the customer satisfaction survey, student satisfaction survey. Now, we also have one on Web Advisor, which you are not required to take. When we have people meeting more 100% in person, someone would come in here and chase me out of the room, and someone else would come in, a proctor would come in and have you take that student satisfaction survey. It's also anonymous if you want to take it. And the instructors can't see any individual identification of any kind of who said, oh, you stink, anything like that. And they can't even see it until after the finals are turned in, all the grades are turned in. So you don't have to take that. But you got to take this one, or you won't be able to take the final exam in this course, and that would knock 25 points off your grade if you didn't take the final exam. So you don't want to be stuck in that particular situation. Am I recording? Am I vocal live? Okay, good. Okay, so we're going to do these two labs, 8226 and 8543 in Packet Tracer, not on the real lab equipment, just to get a good intro to Packet Tracer and everyone gets consistent results. Because this is the old pirate joke about it was my first day with the hook. This is going to be your first day plugging in to the console port of the switch and the router and placing a basic configuration on there, like we talked about Monday. Put a password in, put an IP address in. And the lab doesn't give you a real clear instructions. This is what some of the commands are. So I'm going to go through it step by step and show you how to do that. Okay, hang loose a second here. We've got some attendance. Give me my mouse back. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is launch the Packet Tracer. Packet Tracer, the most previous version 7.3, is installed on noisy machines. As an option, if you're an at-home viewer and you have trouble installing Packet Tracer on your PC, you can go to the My TC Blackboard page, and in the left-hand column, before you choose any particular class, there's a thing called TCC Virtual Infrastructure, and you can launch that and launch the student workspace, and Packet Tracer is installed on that student workspace. So if you got an old Mac, or you got an old Chrome that's only got 1/2 a gig of memory or something like that, just so long as it can go a web browser and connect to My TCC Blackboard, you'll be able to launch Packet Tracer. Packet Tracer itself will run on one of our data center servers, super high-powered servers, and it'll run just fine. Okay, let's see now. 860. 4 people here. All right, here we go then. Okay, I'm going to minimize this. And so Packet Tracer on our PCs here in the lab, you can click on the Windows key and just start typing the word packet. It pops right up on the screen. That's what in Windows, there's 7 different ways of doing anything. That's one way to get it. I'll click on Packet Tracer. Now, Packet Tracer does require you to log in, but there's a GIS mode. I'm going to go into GIS mode to show you how that works. Now we see the exact same screen that you see when you log on to Cisco Networking Academy. It's the Cisco sign-on, single sign-on deal. However, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, it says guest log in. Now you can go ahead and log in with your Cisco Networking Academy ID, and it'll be just fine. I'm going to go ahead and click guest log in. And the little timer's going. It's like the old shareware programs. If you didn't buy them, they would start working, but they'd make you wait 10 seconds. So we're going to wait for him to count down here. He's counting down, he's walking, he's watching, he's waiting. And now finally it counts down to 0, and it says I have to click it again and say confirm guest. Now I'm in Packet Tracer. Now in the guest mode, you can do anything you want to. He does limit you in the guest mode to 3 saves, but we don't need to save anything to do this class. Okay. Now, before I start bringing these devices in for this first lab, I'm going to show you the Microsoft Word document for this very first lab, which looks like this. This very first lab is a very basic thing. We're just going to establish a connection to the device. in Packet Tracer, there's one way that's easy and another way that's super easy. You can use either one you want to, depending on how lazy you feel. So let me show you how to do that. All we're going to do in this lab is establish a console session to a switch and a router and see if we get the prompt that says switch and the prompt that says router, and see how they perform when you first turn them on. Now, in the next lab, we're going to have the same switch and same router. We're going to put a PCA, PCB on them, and we're going to configure where PCA can ping PCB through the switch and the router. Okay, so let me see. I'm going to go back to the Packet Tracer screen and look at my copy of the lab, this first lab. It says we have to have a Cisco device, a router, and a switch. Now, in the real world, on page 2, he shows what happens in the real world. You take that baby blue console cable and you plug it into the COM port of your PC. Now, the problem is most PCs in the past 10 years don't have COM ports anymore, so you got to get a specialized USB to serial port type adapter, or you can go and buy they match. They're baby blue cables, just like the baby blue cables that we have here in the lab, but they have a USB port on one end, which every computer made has got a USB-A port, the old style USB port. The newer computers may only have the USB-C port. For $10, you can buy the one that has the standard USB-A. For $15, you can buy the wire that has the USB-C on it, if you really want to actually connect the things in the lab. So he has an example of this graphic on the top of page 2 of the lab where he's connecting to a laptop computer. In the laboratory classroom here, we actually have COM ports on our PC. It has one built-in COM port, and then I put in an extra USB to RS-32 adapter so we can have 2 devices on one machine at the same time. The newer Cisco devices have a mini USB port on them next to that RJ45 connector. So you can use something like it looks like the type of cable that you would plug an external USB hard drive into your PC with, has the big fat standard USB-A, plugs into your USB port on your existing computer, and then the little bitty mini USB port plugs into that little socket on the side of a USB attached hard drive. You can have a backup drive or something like this. So the newer Cisco routers have got this plug on them, and you can use either one or the other. You can use the RJ45 and the standard baby blue cables, or you can use a mini USB cable. If it's a Windows computer, you have to install a device driver. If it's a Macintosh computer, anybody who got Macs, it just starts working. You don't have to do anything. They're just great about this. So it's only on the newer routers. It is not present on the switches at all, no matter how new the switch is. So we're going to configure Packet Tracer. So I'm going to go down in Packet Tracer. I've got a blank Packet Tracer screen right now. And what I'm going to do is go down and pull up, let's see, I'll do it in left to right order that's on the front page of the lab. He's putting in the switch first. Okay, so I'm going to click on the switch icon here in the lower left-hand corner, and there's the 2960 switch. And I'm just going to put it up in my topology. Now you can either click on it, move it up there, or you can drag it up there, and it works just fine. So there's a switch. Now I'm going to provision a router. So routers are little round things. Thanks for bringing me breakfast. I really appreciate that. I'm going to click on the round router, and this time I'll take now. Warning, Will Robinson. This lab is written assuming you have a 1941 router, kind of a last generation router. The newer labs, when you get into the next course, you may see that, oh, you're supposed to use the Cisco 4000 and something router. The only difference is the interface port numbering scheme is different. The routers we actually have back here in our physical lab are the 1941 routers. They're G00 or G01, so forth. The newer routers, they put an extra slash in there, G000, G001. So to make my packet tracer exactly match what's in this lab as written, I'm going to provision the 1941 router. Now this time I'm going to take it and I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to drag it up to the screen. Okay, so we've gotten the switch and we've gotten the router. Now, on real computer devices like here in the lab, we would fire up our Windows 10 PCs and we would launch the TerraTerm program and we would connect to that device and start configuring. But we're going to use Packet Tracer instead. So I'm going to skip to page 4 and I'm going to show you how to connect to that device. Now, first of all, I'm going to show you the I'm lazy, I don't want to do anything method. I don't want to have to drag a wire and connect it. Okay, so here we go. If I want to get to the console on the switch, I'm just going to click on the button, and there we go. There's the configuration for the switch. As long as I'm here, I'm going to click config and change this name to S1. Just so it appears on the route on there, that's the same as in the lab report for the next lab. Now, so I just clicked on the device, and if I click this third tab that says CLI, I'm at the console prompt, and I'm seeing exactly the same thing I would see as if I was plugging using TerraTerm or using the other method. Now, let me show you how in Packet Tracer you can exactly duplicate the real physical world. In the real physical world, we would need to have a laptop or a desktop PC with that baby blue console cable plugged into the console port of the switch so we can start to configure it. So let me close this and let me do this. So we need to use it. What? Hey, we need a PC anyway for this next lab. We need a PCA and PCB, don't we? Because on the second lab, PCA connects to S1 and PCB connects to R1. So I'm going to go provision. If I click on this first thing here, in devices, endpoints, and I'll just choose a PC. And I'll bring it up here. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on that and click configuration, and I'm going to change it so it says PC-A, just so it matches what's going to be in the next lab. Now, in the new version of Packet Tracer 8, they've got this new great thing called Packet Tracer Physical Mode, and it has dangling wires and real racks and stuff like that. There is a sort of a version of this in the existing Packet Tracer 7.3, but I'm just going to stick with the logical view for this particular lab because, you know, it's your first day with the hook. I don't want you to get too confused here. So I want to connect that PCA to switch 1 through the console port. So I'm going to go up to the PCA. I'm simply going to click on it and wait a minute. I'm sorry. I skipped a step. Right down here in the bottom, see that red jagged lightning bolt? Okay, that's not Zeus. That's our connections panel. We're going to click on that, and we're going to choose a wire to connect between some devices. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to choose the, let me see, where'd it go here? I'm going to float, tell me what it is. Yeah, tell me what it is. I think it's this one. I think it's the blue one, the baby blue one. So I click on here, and I'm going to connect to the RS-232 port on the machine. And I'm going to click to the console port. Yeah, it's the baby blue one. In the new version of Packet Tracer, when you float over it, it tells you, oh, it's a console cable. Oh, it's an Ethernet cable. Now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring up another PC, provision a second PC. In devices. I'm provision the PC, which will be our PCB eventually. And I'm going to connect him. So I'll choose the baby blue crossover cable, rollover cable, connect him to the RS-232 port, and then connect him to the console port. Now in the new version of Packet Tracer, you can even have a PC that doesn't have an RS-232 port, just has a USB port, and you can connect USB to the router, which has got a USB port in it, and it'll work okay. Packet Tracer will even allow you to make nonsense connections that don't work, like trying to plug that RJ45 connector that's on the end of the baby blue console cable. It looks like an Ethernet plug. You could plug it to an Ethernet port on a switch. It won't do anything. Well, yeah, you can make physical wiring mistakes in Packet Tracer just like you would in the real world in the real lab, and it won't work. You're going to make 75% of errors. When we talked about troubleshooting, probably 75% of errors are wiring connection errors. Something's not plugged in properly. Okay, so I have the router connected, I have the PC connected, I have this router PCA. Let me take this PC, second PC, and give them the proper name. So it'll match our second lab, PC-B. And let me do the router too. The first lab we're doing is this.
Not this. I mentioned not the established console.
It's this one. It's just a simple getting the console connection going.
Okay, it is the console connection. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there because I'm looking at it. It's got two PCs on there, but they're both labeled PCA. And then I tried doing that, and it's like you can't label multiple computers.
No, you can't do that in Packet Tracer. You can't.
I'm just trying to replicate what I see on the screen. So I labeled it PCB. I hope I don't get in trouble.
Normally it's PC-A and PC-B.
That's what I figured.
I'm going to use that for consistency so that when we progress to the second lab, it'll be I'll already have them numbered properly. Okay, so now I have PC-A, PC-B are labeled. I've got the switch and the router labeled. We haven't made any connections yet. We haven't made the Ethernet connections. In the second lab, we're going to pull Ethernet connections between PCA and the switch to the router to the second PC, so we can actually ping back and forth between them. But we're just supposed to make sure things are working all right. Okay, so now we're supposed to connect to, he doesn't make it clear here whether we're going to the router or switch. I'll do the switch first. So I could simply click on the switch and go to the console and be connected. But if you were in the real world, you would go to the PC. Let me close this. I'll click on the PC. I'll click on the desktop, and I'll click on the terminal program, which is like TerraTerm, and I'll click OK. And now I'm actually connected to that switch. The Cisco devices come up with a host name, and by default, before you ever change it, if it's a switch, it's switch. If it's a router, it's router.
Can you repeat what you just did? You went to config and then clicked on switching?
I went to, I'll do that again.
Sorry, I'm
Okay.
helping him catch up.
Okay, so I'm going to click on PCA, and then I'm going to click on the desktop,
Okay.
and then I'm going to click on the terminal. And normally we've been going to the command prompt and type of ping. We'll click on the terminal. Okay, the quick and dirty method, if you don't want to mess with all that stuff, is just click on the switch and click on CLI, and there you go. And you'll be connected to it. Okay, he says at the part 2, at the bottom of page 4, we need to get to the privilege exec mode because we're at the user exec mode. It has the host name of the switch and the greater than sign, and so we need to promote ourselves to the privilege exec mode. And there's no passwords have been set yet.
Okay, there we go. Okay.
All right, let me see if it's possible for me to make this font just slightly
My
bigger.
terminal was at the first screen.
Options, preferences, fonts, and make it a little bit bigger.
It's the next
CLI screen supposed to be interactive?
Pardon?
Is the CLI screen supposed to be interactive?
Yes, it is interactive. Okay, well, hang loose. Let me go through this, and then I'll help you guys get going. We're taping here for all the benefit of people that are home too. So hang loose a second. We'll get everybody's problems resolved eventually. Okay, so here I am at the switch prompt. It says switch. Now, if you were in a lab and you happen to connect to one of those switches or routers that those arrogant advanced Cisco students had not erased yet, it may say, oh, what's the password? What's the frequency, Kenneth? And it's always going to be Cisco in class. Otherwise, we've got to perform password recovery. We haven't done that yet. We'll do that in the last class that we take here. Okay, so I'm supposed to type the word enable. Now, remember that these commands can be abbreviated just so long as you use enough characters that it's non-ambiguous. So I typed EN, and I could have pressed enter and it would have worked. Let me do it again. I type EN and press enter, and that's the same as if I type the entire word enable. Okay, it's called tab completion. It's from the old Unix gearheads, you know, what Dilbert calls those sandal-footed, bearded, arrogant Unix administrators he wants to kick in the middle of next century because they're so damn arrogant. So, and it's in Windows now. Windows has got tab completion. So I can type EN and touch the tab key, and it flashes out the command for me. It makes me look like an awesome fast typist. Now we're supposed to look for the presence of, if this were an actual switch in the lab, it might have some previous configuration on. On switches, there's two things we have to check to make sure that are not present, because if they're there, we need to erase the switch and put it back in the factory fresh condition before we can proceed with the lab. Okay, so the first thing is we're going to check for the presence of a VLAN database file, and it's not there. It's not present in this one. If it were there, it would be present. I'm going to make one be there just to show you what it looks like, because you need. We haven't talked about VLANs yet. That's coming up in the fall or something. So let me go to the configuration mode here and make a VLAN just to have one in there. And now when I go back and do the dir, you see there's a file VLAN.dat. So if some previous student had put a VLAN configuration on here, don't worry about it, you don't know what that is yet. It would mess up. It could possibly mess up the default configuration that you're trying to do in your lab first. So we need to get rid of it. So he tells you that at the part 2, step B, we need to type the command delete vlan.dat and press enter 3 times. And that'll get rid of it. If there was nothing there, you get a message that it's not there. Now, is there a startup configuration present in this? We haven't talked that much about how I do this. I'm going to show me the startup configuration. There is no previous configuration present in this device. So on a switch, you have to make sure there's no startup configuration and erase the vlan.dat file if it's present. And then you would have to reload the switch. So if a startup configuration have a present, I delete the vlan.dat file. Now you're supposed to reload the device. Reload. It warns you when you do the reload that if you've done any previous, it's like Microsoft Word. Say you're typing in Microsoft Word and you click the X to close Microsoft Word, but you haven't saved your document fully yet. Remember, Microsoft treats you like you're an idiot. What does he do? He puts a prompt up on the screen. You haven't saved your document yet, and you're telling me to exit Microsoft Word. Didn't you really want to save your document to be up to date before you exit? Here's your last chance. Click yes. So this is the last chance. I'm going to say no because I don't want any previous configuration. Now, fortunately, on Packet Tracer, this reloading only takes about 10 seconds. On a real switch, it takes about 3 minutes. But what you see is here, he's taking the operating system, an iOS operating system that's compressed form in Flash, and he's loading it into the RAM memory because RAM is 10,000 times faster than Flash. He wants to execute it from Flash, not from memory. Windows does the same thing. Boot up Windows. He'll take the Windows code from your hard drive, which is 1,000 times slower than RAM memory. He'll put it in RAM memory, execute it from RAM. What's the one thing you can do to speed up your Windows PC? Put more RAM in. Get an SSD, that'll help too. Okay, so it's finished. And then restart it. And I'm going to show you, he doesn't tell you to do this, I'm going to show you the exact same thing on the router to check on the router. So I'm going to click on the router, go to the CLI, make it a little fatter so we can see it. So sometimes when you use a router or switch for the first time, you'll see this. Do you want to go into the initial configuration dialog? The device recognizes that he has no configuration, and he's asking you to do a basic configuration setup on it, which we're never going to use. We're going to bypass this. Okay, so I'm going to check on the router. Hang loose with any questions or issues until after I finish the taping, and then I'll help anybody with any problems that they're having. And there's just getting this taping done for the benefit of those people that are not physically present and are watching this as a recording later. Okay, so this, I'm going to go to the privilege exec mode. I'm going to do show a startup configuration. There is no startup configuration in this. If there was, it probably meant someone forgot to erase it and they would ask you for names and passwords. Okay, there is no vlan.dat file issue on the router. The only thing you have to do to erase a router is if something was present, you would type erase, startup configuration, and it would erase it. And then we would reload it, and in the tracer, it reloads a lot snappier than it does in real life. It takes about 3 minutes for the real devices. Okay, we're ready to proceed to the next lab and actually do some configuration. Now, what I like to do when I work with these labs is the first page always has the logical layout and IP addresses and configurations you're going to type in. And I like to tear off the front page of the lab so that I can have that in one place where I can see it easily. And then I can go through my lab procedure and not have to flip back to the front page all the time. Okay, so let's go ahead and make this configuration the way it matches on the lab. Now we're already halfway done. We already provisioned 2 PCs. We already provisioned a router and a switch. Now we're going to actually connect them together with some Ethernet cables. So I'm going to proceed from left to right. And just for the benefit here of the viewers, at-home viewers, I'm going to pull up the screen so you can see. We're going to start with PCA. We're going to complete an Ethernet connection to port 6 of S1. Then we're going to add a second Ethernet cable between S1 and R1. And then we're going to add a third Ethernet cable to the PCB on the right, using the port numbers he gave there. So I'll click on the jagged lightning bolt thing, and I'm going to choose the solid dark one as a standard Ethernet cable. Okay, this is really cool when you do this on the version Packet Tracer 8 physical mode, because you can drag the wire and push it into the plug. It gives you more of a tactile sense of what's really going with real stuff instead of just this logical view here. But for the purposes of people that, most of you guys probably have Packet Tracer 7.3, we're going to stick to this right now. You can click on physical and it'll show you the stuff that's in there, but I'm going to skip that for the moment. So I'm supposed to take a physical Ethernet cable and plug it between PCA. So I click on PCA. I'll choose, you notice that the COM1 port is not there anymore. I already put the baby blue rollover cable in it. You can't plug 2 wires in one port. I'm going to plug at the fast Ethernet port on that printer. And I'm going to plug that into, it says port 6. I'm going to click on this and choose port 6, the old style drop-down menu. Okay, one wire down, 2 to go. Now let's connect between the switch and the router. I'm going to click on that dark solid line again. I'm going to click on the switch, and it says he's supposed to go from port number 6. Oh, I'm sorry, port number 5. No, port 6 is gone from the line. It's gone from the list. I already used it up. Port 5 is going to plug into the router. It's going to be port 0/1.
Mine is saying it won't let me connect to this.
I'll check it out for you when we finish the taping here. Okay, one more Ethernet cable. And I'm supposed to connect from the G00 of the router to the single standard Ethernet port that's on the PC. Okay, we're all connected together now. Okay, green triangles. Switch is ready. Switches are up and up automatically. They're ready to accept traffic. There's a little 50-second delay. It turns amber, they turn green. Routers, not like home routers. Routers, we need to enable them. We're going to type some commands in to enable, do a no shutdown command and turn those ports on. Okay, so we're going to, and this lab doesn't give a bunch of details here, so I'm going to show you exactly what to do here. We're going to assign static IP addresses information to the PC interfaces. We've done this before now. On a real desktop PC, you would go to the IP configuration screen and you might click DHCP if it's going to a home router, but we want a static environment here. So PCA is specified to be 192.168.1.3, and if I touch the tab key, just like on a real Windows machine. Now we're going to fill in the default gateway here because we have two different networks. The default gateway, that's the friendly neighborhood router that's going to connect these two pieces together. They're on different numbered networks. Pretend that this one is 817 in Fort Worth and this is 214 in Dallas, and we need to connect to a long distance trunk line to choose the best path for us. So my default gateway for PCA is 192.168.1.1. Okay, now let's configure PCB. Click on PCB, click on the desktop page, IP configuration. This is the same as clicking on the network control panel and bringing up the network control panel. We click IP version 4 and do this. Very similar to the Windows setup. Okay, PCB is specified to be 192.168.0.3. Okay, it's a different area code. It's a different network. And his default gateway was 192.168.0.1. We're going to configure those on the router. We haven't done that yet, but when we get to the router, we'll do this. Okay, can I ping PCB from PCA? What's the name of that famous accounting consultancy firm? Norfolk and Way. Okay, I had them do my taxes, and then I called them up and I says, I was going to call them and say my taxes away, and they said, phone, and I was going to say my taxes away. They said, no fucking way. No, it's not ready yet. So they're not going to be able to ping each other. So if I ping IP config, what's my own address? I'm 192.168.1.3. Can I ping 192.168.0.3? No, I can't do it because we haven't configured the router yet. If it was just a switch, they might work, but we haven't configured that yet. Okay, so the answer to that question near the bottom of page 2 is the pings were not successful because the routers and the switches have not yet been configured. Okay, let's configure the router. Step 2, configure the router. Okay, so I'm going to bring up the router console port. A little bigger so we can see it more. And if you happen to do this lab in the physical mode, when you click on the device, it'll bring up the same dialog, and you can click on CLI and get to the screen and do this. Okay, we're supposed to go into the configuration mode. First of all, he's asking me the question, do you want to go into the configuration mode? Say no. Okay, we're supposed to type enable and go to the configuration mode, go to the privilege exec mode, and I want to go in the configuration mode, which is configure terminal, and actually configure some stuff. Let's give it a device name. The host name is router. The default host name is router. So I'm going to say host name R1. Immediately, when you type commands into the iOS, they immediately go into RAM enter, immediately done here. I haven't saved it yet. Haven't done a copy run start, save it to the NVRAM. So if I do show start right now, Show startup configuration. No, it hasn't been saved yet. If I turn the router off and on again, it would lose everything. It'd be like turning off your computer without saving your Word doc. It would not be saved. Okay, we're supposed to, we assigned the device name. Now we need to assign class as the privilege exec encrypted password. The classic command for this is enable secret, and the word is class. Now, for some reason, the past 10 or 15 years, I don't know what they're doing with you kids in high school. But you'll type a word for password, and you'll put a space behind it, and then you'll type enter. Or you'll put a space before it, and then type the word class, and then type enter. Passwords are very literal. A space counts as a part of the password. So if you type enable secret class space enter, the password is now class space. And no one can do password recovery on it because you didn't use a standard password. So I'm not going to put a space, I'm just going to press enter. Now this will prevent you from getting to the privilege exec mode unless you happen to know that it's the word CLASS, and I'll illustrate. Okay, so here, let me go to the log off. I'm going to type enable. What's the frequency, Kenneth? It's class, CLASS. If you did not know what it is, you type the wrong one, for example, I'll type enable, and I'll type some garbage. Oops, enable, yeah, bad magic, man, bad secrets. So it's kind of like, you can keep trying it over and over again until you get it. That's not really good security. We can tighten that up if we want to. Kind of like the security cop at the mall that says stop, or I'll say stop again. It doesn't have a lot of authority. Okay, so now we need to get back to the privilege exec mode, and now I have to type class together. And now we're going to assign a password to actually go into the console. Remember the console? User exec mode is very limited. Only I can see stuff, but I can't make any changes. Good level to give to help desk people. They can check the status of the router, but they can't actually make any changes that would hose it up because they're bored and you don't want to mess around with that stuff yet. Only authorized Cisco technicians and engineers that work for the company should know the correct password for this. So I'm going to go back in the global configuration mode and say line console 0, which is our code for the console port. And I want that password to be Cisco. And then I want to put the command login to enable logins to take place. Okay, I've reached the bottom of page 3. Now, just to test that, I'm going to log off again. And this time, when I try to connect, I have to know that the first password is Cisco. And then to get to the privilege exec mode, I have to know that it's class. And they don't show on the screen. Typically, passwords aren't displayed on the screen, so someone can't shoulder surf you and see those. Now, we are instructed to encrypt the plain text passwords. Here's a command I briefly discussed in the lecture. Show running configuration. Shows the entire running configuration that's in RAM right now. And we see that the enable secret password is already encrypted. MD5 encryption. Very difficult to reverse engineer this. But look at the console password. Password Cisco, plain text. Anybody can walk by my screen and see this. So we're going to use a command to fix that called service password encryption. And what that's going to do now is when I do show run again, let's look at that last password again. Remember it was plain text Cisco? Now it's slightly encrypted.
I didn't do it.
Oh, good, they're testing the fire alarm. The electricians are here. They're putting in new lights. Don't worry about that.
Attention.
This is a drill.
There is a fire emergency in the building. You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevator.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Electrician slipped the wrong circuit breaker. Okay, let's just continue as if everything was going really well. This is going to be great for the people at home watching this, isn't this?
Attention. There is a fire emergency in the building.
Okay, now we're going to create a banner message of the day.
Do not use.
This is something that the lawyers that work for your company will tell you what to do, which is, well, authorized users only, get out of here, you, stuff like this. All right. So let's do that. Go to the global configuration mode. They're working on the fire alarms. They're working on the fire alarms. You don't have to actually leave. They're down in the office section working on the fire alarm system. Okay, so we're going to create the banner message of the day, and I'm going to make it say warning you. Okay, it can be whatever you want to say. Now here's how this works. Before you log into it and ever put in your password, you get the warning. You get the message of the day. So it's there. Now let's configure the IP addresses in the addressing table. Cisco, I'll go to the privilege exec mode, passwords class, and let's go to the configuration mode, configure terminal, interface. I'm going to look at the first page of the lab, and I'm going to configure on this. I'm on the router. I'm going to configure these two router ports. So at the very top of the chart, we're going to specify interface gigabit 0/0, and I'm going to give its IP address 192.168.0.1. Okay, it's configured. Now let's use interface gigabit 0/1, IP address 192.168.1.1, 255.255.255.0, no shutdown. So let's check with show IP interface brief and see show IP interface brief. So they've been configured and they're up and up. I've got the no shutdown command. They're up and up. I didn't fat finger the 192 and make it 129 or something like this. It's okay. Now, we need to save the running configuration to the startup configuration file. Copy the running configuration to the startup configuration. You can do that in abbreviate. You can do copy, run, start. It does the same thing. Now, who wants to lay a bet in intervals of a dime to a dollar if the ping will work now between PCA and PCB? All the lights are green. Remember, they were orange and amber and on, and they were not working properly. I wonder if PCA can ping PCB now. Well, let's see. We'll go to the command prompt. It works. It works. After the heart-stopping request timed out that made you think that it wasn't working because of an Ethernet protocol called ARP, Address Resolution Protocol. It has to match your 48-bit MAC address, your physical burn-in address, with your layer 3 dynamic IP address that you put in. So that usually causes the first ping to fail. If I do it again, it holds it in memory for about 5 minutes. Okay, so this is good. Okay, I saved it. Now we're going to go to part 3 and configure the switch. So I'm going to bring the switch up. Notice that the switch has no configuration yet, but it's working properly. Because 75% of these Cisco switches that ship into business are never configured. They just start to be a fast switch. So this is going to work okay for us. But we do want to put a password on it. We want to, it's being using our corporate network, we do need to place passwords on it. So I'm going to go into the switch mode. And the first thing I'm going to do is change this device name to what we're supposed to use. Enable, configure terminal, host name, S1. Prompt changes to S1. Let's do the enable secret class. Okay. Now let's go to the line console 0 and say password Cisco and log in. And let's test this out by logging off. Oh, it's got to be Cisco. And then to get to privilege exec mode, it's got to be class. Well, that's working okay. Okay, remember we encrypted the passwords. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip that. In the banner, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to skip to that step H and create a management address on that switch. So you can tell that to the switch or whatever from a remote location. And he's going to have us actually create a secure shell environment in just a second to get to that switch. Okay, the switch is given as configure terminal. Yep. I mistyped it. Oh dear. And I'm in the DOS penalty box. 6. There we go. So configure terminal. Interface VLAN 1 IP address. Oops, caps lock. The switch is supposed to be 192.168.1.2, 255.255.255.0, and no shutdown. And we have to configure a default gateway for that switch so we can connect. We talked about this in the slide Monday. We have to configure. Remember, the lady administrator was in another network? Just like desktop PCs that need a default gateway to get to any other network, they don't need a default gateway to get to other hosts on their own network, but they need a default gateway to relay to anywhere else in the universe. So let's create a default gateway on that and do the little bug in packet tracer. I'm going to go back to the pure mode here and do IP default gateway 192.168. I think it's 1.1. Yeah, 1.1. Okay. Now you should be able to ping and attach to it from another device. Okay, part 3, we're going to do from the router. We're going to go back to the router.
You are to leave the building by the nearest exit or exit stairway. Do not use the elevator.
And we're supposed to type the command show version. Show version. And he shows us a lot of stuff that scrolled off the screen. When we first booted it up and was gone forever, show version brings us back up on the screen so we can see, oh, what version of the iOS is he running? What is the config register? We'll use that for password recovery in a later class. So this is the iOS version. iOS version 1900, module 1900. Do I do that? Universal K9, it says. Universal C1900. It's a 1900 series switch. K9 doesn't mean dog. It means it has encryption. We need encryption. Public and private key pairs to do security. Universal iOS. So this is a 2960 switch. We provisioned the 2960 switch. Okay, the router is a 1941 router, and we're supposed to do the routing table. Show IP routing table. So here we can see, let me blow this up a little bit so that the here we go. So you have the network address that's in this routing table. We have 2 directly connected Ethernet ports connected to a switch and a PC, and these are the network values /24. And then we actually have the I call it link local address, the host address. So you can actually see from show IP route, you can see the actual IP address of the 2 interfaces. Thank you, baby Jesus, for exiting the building. Okay, now we can proceed as if everything was going really well. So how many route entries are coded with a C code in the routing table? We went to public school, but 1, 2. 2 of them. The L's are sort of a duplicate of this. What is the media access control of the G01 interface? I'll have to type the command show interface gigabit 0/1, and it shows me. Did it kind of pop off the top of the screen here? Here we go. Yeah, it kind of go off the top of the screen. So here's the burn-in address, BIA, burn-in address, Ethernet address, physical address, MAC address, burn-in address, all exactly the same thing. That's that hardware address that's been burned into that Ethernet port. Unique in the universe, required by the IEEE. First of all, you have to give them $1,500, and they'll give you a few to use. Then you run out of those, you give them another $1,500. That's a business model. Follow the money. They have to be unique in the universe. The only reason, now the hackers tell me that they can go into the Windows registry and change the MAC address in the software, and the only reason I could think of you would want to do that is you're doing something bad. We need your real accurate MAC address so that you'll work properly on the network.
How are we supposed to do this lab without the commands?
They don't tell you the commands. I'm telling them to you.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
shit stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm stuck back in configuring.
And I'll come and help you guys individually here. So when we finish this taping, we're almost done. Okay. Display a summary list of the interfaces on the router and the switch. I'm at the router. I'm going to type show IP interface brief. And there are 2 interfaces, gigabit 0, gigabit 1. They're shown here, they're up and up, the IP addresses are proper. Now let's do it on the switch. This is kind of interesting. Let's go ahead and see it on the switch. Because the switch has got a bunch of interfaces on it. show IP interface brief, and there are the switches have 24 fast Ethernet ports and 2 gigabit Ethernet ports, 26 ports that are shown here. And then if I roll up here, we can see that the 2 ports that we're using, port 5 and 6, port 5 goes to the router, port 6 goes back to PCA on the left. They're up and up. I did not have to type no shutdown. On switches, you don't have to type no shutdown on physical ports because most of them go into the field and never get configured. And they would be too much for you to have to pay a Cisco guy $300 to come in and type no shutdown on your switches to make it work. Now let's secure remote access to the router. And this is the only part where they actually give you the step-by-step actual commands. How nice of them. Okay, I'm going to go to the router. I'm going to make the screen a little bigger. Okay, so on the sort of the top third, sort of halfway down page 5 of the lab, we're going to go to R1 and we're going to configure. We have to configure a domain name. For Secure Shell to work with public and private keys, you have to have a domain name in there. And it could be anything you want to. This is a lab. So I'm going to say IP, have to be in the configuration mode, configure terminal. IP domain name. And it could be anything in the world. I'm going to make it tccd.edu. I can make it cisco.com if you're not interfering with anybody in the outside world. It could be anything. Now we're going to generate the crypto keys. So CRYP crypto key generate. I'm trying to use tab completion here. RSA. And is this a bug? 2024. There we go. So we generated the keys, public and private keys. Now let's generate a username. So username, I'm going to do it exactly like it's printed in the lab here. Because next step, you'll have to key in from your workstation using that exact spelling. So the username is capital SSH, lowercase user, and this password is Cisco. Now, we didn't configure this before. Let's go line VTY 0 through 4. This is the line VTY 0 through 4. And we're going to say login local. And then we're going to say transport. What this command means is transport input SSH only allow secure shell, which is encrypted. Telnet, the old Telnet, FTP, completely unencrypted, names and passwords in the plain clear. Anybody can run Wireshark and see it. Not good. In a sandbox lab, okay, knock yourself out. In the real world, we should encrypt them. Now, he says on PCA, go to TerraTerm, or we're going to go to PCA and we're going to go to our client. So go to PCA, and just to check from PCA, I'm going to check on the command prompt because I'm supposed to get to the router here. Can I ping the router? 192.168. I'm on PCA 0.1. 0.1 for me. 1.1. I can ping the router. If I can't ping it, there's no way I'll be able to telnet to it or secure shell to it. Okay, so I'm going to go to the desktop and choose the Telnet SSH client. So the host name is 192.168.1.1, and the username was SSH user. Connect, and let's see if Packet Tracer implements this properly. Okay, what was the password for SSH user? It was Cisco. Oh, look there, I got the message of the day warning. I'm logged into user exec mode. I want to go to the build exec mode. I got to know that it's class. It's just as if I was in a console connection, but now it's over an encrypted wire from as far away as I want to be from that actual device. I can manage a remote device far away safely, and nobody from the Ukraine or something is going to be able to see my stuff. Now, the question there is a bogus question for packet tracer. It says, what is the displayed message? When you do this from a real Terraterm or PuTTY type client, he's going to say, we need to do a first time exchange of the public and private keys. Click OK to allow that to take place. And that's what you see the first time. You see OK to exchange the keys type message, and he'll do that. Reflection questions are not required. There's enough stuff to do in this lab already. Okay, I've stepped through the 2 labs. Hang loose. I'm going to stop recording. Let's see. Go back to here. Recording. We're still recording. I'm going to